You're listening to A.C.E Podcast Nation, the hottest new podcast network and YouTube channel in the UK, featuring original series, top guests, expert analysts, and more. Check out facebook.com/AceCast Nation for news on latest guests and shows. Watch every show in full at youtube.com/ACE Podcast Nation.
Hello, this is Aaron the King Khalid, future Cage Warriors welterweight champion. If you're into podcasts that talk about MMA and general MMA chit chat, then A.C.E Podcast Nation is the one for you. Go on to YouTube, like and subscribe, and every Wednesday they do a Danny Batten Fight Talk Show, which breaks down the cards previously to that week and future matchups following that fight show. So yeah, it's a great podcast. Like I said, like, subscribe and give it a listen.
Champion, welcome, Danny Batten.
Have you seen arms, Danny?
Number one. You win.
Hey guys, I'm Si. Welcome to A.C.E Podcast Nation, the home of the Danny Batten Fight Show. This is episode number 61, and we'll be talking to our special guest. Plus, me and Danny will be discussing some of the latest news, predictions for next week's UFC, among other things. The show, as usual, video versions, youtube.com/ACE Podcast Nation, and the audio versions at all your usual podcast and radio platforms. But as ever, joining me is, first of all, former Cage Warriors champion, UK MMA legend, Mr. Danny Batten. How goes it, my friend?
You're right, Si, and all right, Linton. Yeah, I'm having a good week. Yeah, things have been going quite well of late. So yeah, I'm in a good place.
Yeah, I think our special guest just froze up a bit there, but he'll be back in a minute. So yeah, it's been a weird one, mate. No UFC this week, and it is what it is, I guess. It's, we roll with the punches, as it were. So we're gonna have a quick chat to Linton, talk about some of his experiences over the last year and his fights and stuff, and then we'll, of course, with me and you, will have a little look at the next week's card and some news stories from around the combat sports world. But just as we wait for Linton to come back, mate, what any sort of thoughts on the McGregor-Poirier stuff after, in the week after, should I say?
Yeah, obviously a lot of people are talking about it. Regards my friends, and obviously on, the media side of things, it's been spoken about a lot. I just, I always maintain, and I think you've pointed this out, how, humble McGregor is in defeat, and he knew where he was going wrong. He knew his leg was, becoming the issue. But he doesn't take anything away from Poirier.
No.
It just, to me, I think because he won with his hands, he was trying to search with his hands. But he has to remember, really, it's the fact that he was throwing those awkward kicks that last time out that therefore made the hands land. I just think he was over-focused on the hands too much, and it made him stick in the mud, so to speak, with his base and his legs, and it made his lead leg become a target.
Yeah, I mean, we talked in the preview show, mate, didn't we, about how well he had set those shots up to finish the fight in the first fight, and he just didn't do that in the second fight. But, okay, so our special guest for this week is back after he was frozen up. Delighted to welcome Bellator MMA heavyweight, Mr. Linton Vassell. Welcome, my friend. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, boys. I'm good. How are you guys?
All good, mate. Really been looking forward to this one. As soon as I said to Danny, just over Christmas, that I'd been speaking to you on Instagram and that, and he was very excited to have you on and stuff, because I know he'd been saying about it for a while, like a year or something. He's got, I'll get Linton on, and then it just happened that me and you started speaking, so I thought we'll sort it out and get you on. And
Oh, perfect timing, really.
Yeah, 100%, mate. So, what's lockdown been like for you? What's the last year been like for you?
So for here, we closed over for about a month when it sort of hit us in March. The gym got tested, and then the people that had fights were allowed to train, and the people that obviously tested positive had to stay away. And once the weeks had cleared up, get another test, and then go back to the gym. But since April, the gym's been open. Everyone's been able to train and get ready for their fights, properly, rather than just, there's a fight coming up, and then just trying to find a gym and people can train. So we'll be up to gym open and get training.
Good stuff. So have you got a fight coming up soon, or any fights lined up at the moment?
No, well, Bellator are looking at her April to come back.
Okay. Yeah.
If I had it my way, I'll be fighting as soon as the card starts. So they said April. I'm going to stay obviously in shape, and then when they give me the actual date, then I can step up a little bit. But it doesn't really stop here. It's more of a lifestyle. Here you just every day you go train in the morning, come home, keep the recovery in, go to sleep for a few hours or so, which Danny knows I like to do.
Oh, he always sleeps, this guy. He's like a bear.
Who doesn't? Yeah, come on. Who doesn't like a nap, mate? Come on.
And then about 6 days a week.
I got to say, it looks like the weather where you are is a lot better than where we are, because I don't know about Danny, but it's been snowing all day today, and where I am in Cardiff, it's miserable and cold. But
so I was back for 10 days. It was really
sweet. Yeah. Did you catch the Conor McGregor fight last week? I'm kind of interested in.
Yes, I did.
What did you think of that?
I second what Danny said. I think Conor came out strong. He came out heavy with the hands, come out fast with the hands. I was surprised he wasn't using his usual kicks. Like throw some kicks to the car, or to the knee, throw some crescent kicks, and then body kicks. He didn't throw none of them. I think he was just, again, as Danny says, trying to knock him out. And I actually thought he had Dustin's number. And then, I think Dustin went back to the corner, and I think his team must have said, start throwing some leg kicks, mixing it up. It seemed like Conor didn't have an answer for the calf kicks. He didn't check them, and I think it sort of took him out of his rhythm. And then, before you knew it, he sort of got stunned through a few punches, and that was over.
Yeah, it's tricky, It's like Danny said earlier. If you go searching for something and you're looking just for that one avenue of a finish, it can become almost like a detriment to you. Even though he's got so much power in those hands.
He stunned him. He stunned him a couple of times, and Dustin obviously recovered. And I feel like Dustin has got a lot better than the first encounter.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think I saw who was it? Michael Chandler said he was kind of assuming that he was going to fight Dustin Poirier for the title, and Charles Oliveira sort of put his hand up and basically said, "Hang on a minute, you've had one fight. I've been running through numerous people, so it'd be interesting where they go."
He's looking dangerous, Charles is.
Yeah,
Great.
he's bad. He's bad man.
Ferguson, I didn't expect that.
Yeah, he's had a real tough year. Tony Ferguson. He's that. What was it? Which fight was it, Dan? Where he got absolutely just smashed up for 5 rounds or 3 rounds? It was Gaethje, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Was it Gaethje?
Then he got equally dismantled by Charles, obviously, and he's having a real difficult time in his career. For someone who's on top of the world fighting for the title against the unbeaten Khabib, and all of a sudden now really been knocked off his perch.
Yeah, pretty much. And that fight fell through a couple of times.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
They the thing is with Ferguson, because of the way he fights as well, even throughout his hot streak and when he was winning, he was taking a lot of damage. And I think, as you get older, there's gonna catch up with you, innit? Just that amount of damage to the head and face, eventually it's just going to catch up with you. I think I'd be quite interested to see Michael Chandler face McGregor, even though I don't think it's necessarily a good fight for McGregor to take next, because I think Conor needs a win now just to cement himself, a bit like he did with when he fought Cowboy. That kind of just steadied any kind of questions about where he was with his focus or where he was going, etc. I feel like even though him and Chandler would be an incredible, you could just imagine him going toe to toe for 3 rounds, 5 rounds, or whatever. But
you underestimate Chandler's ground game.
Yeah.
He's good wrestler.
You know, if Chandler did get in trouble, he'll take him down, and it would be an easy night.
Yes, I think
Chandler's ground game's like on point.
Yeah, he was. I can't remember many people coming in to the UFC and having that much of an impressive debut. But because normally they like to build you up, and I think Michael Chandler said that in one of his interviews. They'll build you up with a few fights, but they chucked him in straight away with the top end.
If they did that, to see, to be like, Bellator boys can't hang.
I think so.
If you don't, they mention them in Bellator. I've never heard you.
Well, when they announced him, didn't they? They mentioned that he was Bellator champion, which, like you said,
never.
Go on, mate.
Have they ever mentioned? They'll be like former world champion.
Yeah. But they say other promotions, wouldn't they? They'll say like Cage Warriors, or they'll say sort of some of the South American ones. But I've, like you say, never heard them mention Bellator, which I just think it's almost like a bit petty, because at the end of the day, like, Bellator is the second biggest promotion, certainly up there with any other, it's bigger than any other promotion in the world. So to not mention it just seems a bit silly, which that kind of takes us in. We had a question sent in by Gaz, and he said he wanted to get your guys' opinion on if you think do fighters have to conquer the UFC to be considered amongst the best in the world, or can they do so from other promotions without going to the UFC or without being in the UFC? What do you think, Lind?
Yeah, of course they can. UFC is just a name, and obviously people just know that one because it's been out first. Look at Fedor, for instance. He never went UFC. One of the biggest names, in heavyweight division. I just think it's more of a name, and people just look up to a UFC fighter than anything,
Yeah.
Than actually being a world champion in any promotion.
Yeah, what do you think, Dan? Because I feel like at the end of the day, if you're a world champion, you're a world champion, whatever the promotion may be. But ultimately, like, there's no getting away from it because of the TV deals and the amount of money which UFC was sold for a couple of years ago. There's no denying that it's like this huge juggernaut of a company which everyone in the world, even if you're not a MMA fan, people know what it is or who it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to become a world champion, whether it's on Cage Warriors, Bellator, any of those world-class promotions, you're obviously getting yourself some form of, respect and insight to your level, and to get to that level and win any world title on any of those shows is something big. But of course, UFC is being seen as the other one. It's the one with the most following. It's just a normal process, but. Do you have to have it? But maybe not. But for most people, they will be chasing that UFC. But yeah, I think it'd still be a great achievement to be a world champion on Bellator or Cage Warriors, as I was, and as Modestas has become. I mean, that's a great thing to have against your name as a credential. But yeah, there's obviously competition there in promotions, and that's a good thing. The world of fighting would be a boring place if it was only one promotion. Yeah. I think the thing what makes it interesting is you do get Bellator fighters come over to UFC, and then you also get UFC fighters that for whatever reason, leaves UFC by choice, or it becomes their next place of interest, and then you get to see how each of the promotions do against each other effectively in that way. I think it all just makes for interesting viewing for the fans at the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%. A couple of other questions, Linton. Just just to get a bit of a feel for you, what you like, but also it's always interesting conversation. If you could fight any heavyweight, past or present, current, whatever, who would you like to have a go at?
Well, he's still around. We just spoke about him. It has to be Fedor, man. Like, again, big name. He's still contracted to Bellator. So, for me, it's going to have to be Fedor. I fight heavyweight. He's a heavyweight fighter. I heard he still has, I think, 3 to 2 fights left in his contract. So I feel like, for me, to get Fedor on my record, on my resume, that's one big achievement in itself. Again, he's a legend. So that's my pick.
That's the one you got your eye on, then, is it, mate?
And I've mentioned it a number of times.
Yeah.
I feel like it's bound to happen at some point.
Yeah, and talking of legends, you had a fantastic win against that Sergey. I'm going to butcher his name here.
Butcher his name, mate.
Yeah. I mean, that guy, even today, is still classed as a devastating striker. He's a real force to be reckoned with. But you really stamped him out. Now, was that a game plan to do that, or did it just fall well for you? And in hindsight, after the fight, was it a lot easier than you thought it was going to be?
So I've been watching him for a while, since he joined Bellator. I didn't know of him before, but I knew at some point I was going to go to heavyweight, and I'd watched him a couple of times. And even though he had devastating striking, I felt the people that he was connecting with were people that were stationary. So I knew, as long as I was not there to be hit and able to do what I can do, take him down, wear him out, and grind on him, I would get the win. So the game plan was tire him out, make him miss, land my shots, get the takedown when it's necessary, and get him a submission or ground and pound. So for the last probably 7 weeks, 8 weeks, that's all I was doing in training. Like taking them down, ground and pound, or I would do a mind back, and then we'll start the round that way. So I was working all the different scenarios. And again, no disrespect. After the fight, it obviously always feels easier once you win.
Of course.
But you always think of the worst scenarios leading up to the fight, and you always think of the worst things going to happen. But obviously, when the fight happened, I didn't take much damage at all, and I was pretty much fresh to fight another time. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course you had another great win against that Ronnie Marks. That was a pretty dominant performance.
Yeah.
Would you say that's another fight that kind of went to plan?
Yeah, again, I knew he was a ground guy, and I'd watched his fights, and the game plan for that was eventually we're going to go down to the ground, and we're going to see who has the better ground game. Because a lot of people don't give me credit for my ground game. Everyone's like, "Oh, he's a black belt. He's a black belt." I was not fazed by that whatsoever. I know I've trained with black belts. Obviously, been under you for whoever knows long, 16 years, Danny. You taught me the ropes and stuff. So, I knew coming with a great game plan again, and I'll get the win. He was stronger than I thought. But I just felt like my hips were heavy, and I found I had the right game plan to stuff his takedowns and his striking attempts as well.
Yeah. I do find, and I don't know whether you agree with this, but I just find in the heavyweight division, to be a Brazilian black belt is great. A jiu-jitsu black belt is a great credential to have, but you really don't have to be. I mean, like you say, you don't really train in a gi. You have done scathingly, but you just don't do it in any regularity whatsoever. And I know how good you ground this. Obviously, I trained with you for many, many years, and I've seen you grapple with some big, really high-level black belts, and you really run through them. I would suggest you don't have a jiu-jitsu style at all. It's very, very much catch-orientated.
Yeah.
obviously a huge MMA influence, but it transfers over very well in just straight 101 no-gi grappling. And I think you've done it, ever so well with that. And it was nice to see you, dominate someone with a black belt with real credentials to showcase that, hey, you can be just a pure no-gi specialist. You don't have to be a jiu-jitsu specialist. Although I'll always maintain, I think BJJ has definitely got its place in training for MMA. It's a great way of improving your ground skills. It's just that obviously back from our era when we started, there wasn't a lot of BJJ, was there? So it was not necessarily a natural process or progress for us to go through. And but you showcased definitely in your career how that there is ways around it, and there is ways of becoming and staying relevant. It's like British fighters, really, that we don't have the pedigree of wrestling over the Americans and Russians. But now, once you're aware of the takedowns, you can avoid the ground. You don't have to be a devastating wrestler necessarily. MMA truly is a sport that's evolved into its own skill set. And it's beautiful. I just can't wait to see you come over and train again. It's always great having you over. And
I couldn't do it, obviously, for Christmas.
No, we missed out last time.
For 4 weeks, and, come and train with you guys. So that will happen again, obviously, once the pandemic has sort of calmed down again. But I felt like my my ground game, definitely not a jiu-jitsu. It's more catch than anything, and I feel like my length and my pressure is enough that people can't not intimidate. You can't. No one else has that style. That's the word I'm looking for. No one else has that style.
Yeah. Well, this is
teach it. I don't.
This is I mean, this is why you're called the Swarm. Because
I came to the gym. I was just picking someone's leg up and then bending it. I had no skills. But it worked for me.
Yeah.
Linton, like I said, I appreciate you giving us your time, mate, and I know you've got to go, but I was wondering if you could, a couple of things really. I could ask you first of all, obviously you beat Karatanov, then you went on to beat Ronnie Marks. You've mentioned that you've got your eyes on that Fedor fight. Do you feel like if you were to get that Fedor fight kind of next up, and you were to beat him, you've got to be right in the conversation for a Bellator heavyweight title shot. You'd be on a 3-fight win streak, and you'd have beaten Karatanov and Fedor. Is that something which you still got your eyes on? Eventually getting in there for the title picture.
100%. That's what I want. That's what I'm in this game for. I didn't come in this game just to be a number. But that world title, I've had two title runs, both at light heavyweight. I would just say I was always so close, but light heavyweight was not for me. I'd fight that because I could make the weight. But when it came to it, I felt like I was just missing something. But at heavyweight, I feel like I got that. So if I fight Fedor or whoever it is, I feel like I'll be next, regardless who it is. I'll be next to fight that one.
Cool. The other thing I was going to ask you, actually two things. We had a question sent in, so straight after I finished with this show, I'm doing a live Royal Rumble preview show, which is a wrestling show. So the question which was sent in is obviously Bobby Lashley is on that tonight, but he had a few fights in Bellator. I think he might have been undefeated. And there's also another kind of ex-WWE guy in Jake Hager, who I think has been thinking. Like, how does that feel for someone like yourself who's been in the game since forever, and then you've got kind of guys coming over from WWE who are, they're not young guys. I think they're like 37, 40 in terms of starting out their career. I know Jake Hager's unbeaten since he's been in Bellator, but in my opinion, don't want to put words in your mouth or Danny's mouth, in my opinion, he hasn't really fought anyone of note or anyone who's right up there.
They're trying to build him,
yeah. But like, what's your opinion of those guys in terms of MMA and ability and stuff like that? I'm genuinely interested, obviously, just what the opinion is of proper fighters, if you like, to with these guys coming in. With no disrespect to them.
Yeah, no, again, no disrespect. Props to them. Like, from going from, again, wrestling is entertainment business, going into real fighting, props to them. You know, again, Brock Lesnar did it, and he did it well. Bobby Lashley's done it a bit. Again, he did pretty well in his career. And then Jake Hager, he's doing it. So hats off to them. You know, it brings more eyes to us. You know?
Yeah.
So I'm happy with them doing it. If I can get a fight with any of them, even better. That's more stuff on my list.
Well, you was a massive wrestling fan, haven't you? You've always been really into it, because obviously Linton go way back to when he first began, and one of my other students, Cliff Hall, that I'd been training for a good couple of years before Linton come along, he kept telling me about this Linton character, and he kept saying, "Oh my God, sometimes we muck about in the garden, we call that simulate a bit of WWE, and he throws everyone around. This guy's so powerful. I've got to get him training." And eventually Linton did come training. And my God, sparring was like doing a WWE. You would try and hold close guard, and he'd pick you up and swing you around by your ankles and stuff like that. It was hilarious. Yeah, so I'd imagine you must be quite excited about having such characters come over to Bellator, because as a child and still now, I take it you've always been really interested in following it. I think once it's in your blood, something like that, you can't take it out, and you could end up fighting one.
I still watch wrestling every now and then. Again, see Brock Lesnar, Bobby Lashley, you know what I mean? So I actually got a picture with Bobby Lashley when I saw him, because I was a bit starstruck.
Yeah.
I grew up watching it, and I still watch it now. So hats off to them.
Yeah.
You know, they're doing their thing.
Anyone who can get in the shape that Bobby Lashley is in, aged 42 or whatever he is,
and the things he does, he's super athletic. Like, watch him in wrestling, the stuff he's doing, like the speed they move, it's incredible.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Someone like that size, 18, 19 stone or something like that? Is that how?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, something around that.
Hi, man.
Jeez.
Yep.
Yeah, to be able to do those things, like people forget, like the athletic ability that they have got, and the danger they put themselves in as well. Obviously, very different. Very last question from me, Linton, and I'll let you get upon your day in the sunny US of A. But I wanted to talk to you about Ryan Bader. Obviously, he was previously in the UFC. Had a bit of like up and down time there. I think it's fair to say. Like, he did all right, but then had a couple of losses. He's come over to Bellator. And I think it's fair to say he's done very well.
Very well. Double champion.
Yeah, man. He's double champion. You fought him back on Bellator 186 a few years ago. Like, were you surprised with how he was able to make that transition from UFC to Bellator, and then obviously go on and become a double champion in the time that he has?
Yes and no. But again, he's always been a great athlete. He only lost to a few people himself. So it will never surprise that he came over to Bellator and won the titles. I was surprised when I fought him. Again, like, I know he's a super athlete, and when I take people down, I usually get them. So I was super surprised he was able to reverse me twice. So that did take, a bit of confidence away from me. And yeah, again, he's a super athlete, but I feel like in the second fight, it won't be like that. I've learned a lot from my mistakes. I feel like I've grown as an athlete as well. And at heavyweight, I feel so much confident, so much healthier as well. So, I'd love that rematch. But yeah, he's done amazing, and he's doing amazing, in Bellator. So hats off to him.
Sounds like heavyweight is much more suited to you, like in terms of not just from fighting point of view, but just from a health and a lifestyle point of view as well.
That Danny knows, cutting that weight is horrible. It's the worst thing, and as you get older, it really does get harder.
Yeah.
Where before I was cutting weight, I didn't really have to watch my diet, and then as I got older, I was watching my diet, and then I'd have to miss a meal. That never and I had to miss 2 meals, and I had to stop drinking some water, and yeah, it got to the point where I really didn't have much more weight to lose. Like I'm pretty ripped anyway, so it wasn't like I had a lot of water to lose. It was muscle I was losing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just came to the point, let's do heavyweight.
Yeah, I think it's pretty natural, isn't it, for light heavyweights and also for middleweights also to go up as they get older. I mean, obviously in the boxing industry, they have a lot more smaller steps as they go up their weight brackets, but they end up,
classes in between.
yeah, they end up fighting at 4 or 5 different weights throughout a whole career.
Yeah.
So obviously in MMA there's a bigger stagger, but yeah, I just think it's a natural progression. You was always very, very big at the weight. Naturally, and I think it was a matter of time. As soon as you was hitting approaching your mid-30s even, you could see you was just packing on more and more muscle, and I always felt in my blood that it was a matter of time that you was going to have to move up to heavyweight. And I think for most people with a lengthy career starting out at light heavy will progress to heavyweight at some point. But it's strange, isn't it? You get you've got so many lightweight fighters that then went down to featherweight, and then went from featherweight down to bantamweight. There's quite a few fighters that have done that as they get older, which is actually literally crazy. But some people just choose to do it the opposite way around. But mostly for big guys, they do go up and get heavier.
But again, I feel so much better. I really do. Healthier, I mean, no injuries. Good, can train better as well. And you know what? It's actually going to bed on fight week and fight weigh-in day with a full belly.
Yeah.
Like the weigh-in day before, and you go to bed. Because again, we've been there, Danny. I look rough. I'm cutting weight, and I'm going to bed all tired, and then waking up horrible. Now it's different. Go to bed.
Yeah. You can just focus, right?
Yeah.
You can just focus.
And it's so much better doing it that way than.
Yeah. And just one final question that I'd like to ask you really is that, obviously we've had an amazing time together, training, starting off your career. Yeah. And for much of it, I've been able to be by your side, even though you went stateside. Okay, recent times are kind of a bit crazy at the minute. But, obviously I've got other students moving on up, and we've got Modestas Bukauskas that's moved up into UFC, that's sort of training buddy of yours when you come back to UK. Obviously people like him and Lucas Klinger, who's fought also in Bellator. These are all your training buddies when you come back over. Is there any words of advice for someone like Modestas, who's now approaching his 3rd fight in UFC? Obviously he doesn't have the experience you have. Is there any kind of words of wisdom that you would say for him for his career?
I'll just say keep doing you, man. Obviously, we'll have holes in our games. Work with them,
Yeah.
I never lost 2 fights, let alone 3. So you will have your dark places. But you want to retire. Are you good enough? You're in the UFC for a reason. So I'll definitely say, go back, work on a few little things, maybe write a list of the things you want to get better at, and then go from there, man. Again, you're doing amazing. We'll win, we'll lose. It's all part of the game.
Good words they are, mate. Good words. I like it. Linton, mate, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
No worries.
You fitting us in and finding some time. You're welcome back anytime, mate. Obviously, to come and have a chat, talk some MMA. But
we did 32 minutes. Didn't even
I know, man. It goes quick, doesn't it? Goes real quick all the time. Goes real quick.
Yeah, I'll come back on.
Good man. Keep in touch, and we'll
nice
speak.
To meet you, Simon.
Speak to you soon. Yeah, man.
Good to see you, Danny, as well.
So, awesome to see you again, Linton.
No worries. Thank you.
Take it easy. Linton Vassell, mate. Another new name on the Danny Batten Fight Show. I love it. Love having all these different names, and I can also announce that next week we are being joined with another fighter who's based in the US, is not from the US. We'll be joined by UFC fighter Arnold Allen next week, Danny, which is going to be another cracker, mate.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Yeah.
Also, we got our first female fighter coming up as well, which is something that we had said at the start of the year. We wanted to get some more female athletes on, and not next week, but the week after, we have our first female guest, or first female fighter guest. So looking forward to it, mate. Some phenomenal stuff coming up over the next few weeks. So we are having a slightly shorter show this week. It's probably going to be around 45 to an hour, just about, because I've got that live show, and it worked out actually as it was quite well, because there was no UFC last night or Bellator or anything. Linton gave us half hour, so we're just going to have a quick chat, mate, really about some things, give our predictions for next week's UFC, and then we'll wrap it up, and we'll be back next week with Arnold Allen, which I am very much looking forward to.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
A couple of there was one question which I didn't get to for Linton, but I could put it to you and get your opinion from it. JD asked, he said, in your opinion, who will be the next British champion in the UFC? And then he followed it up as second part, same question, but includes Cage Warriors, Bellator, whatever, like any other promotion. Who do you think is going to be the next British champion? Could be in 10 years' time, but who do you think it will be?
Yeah, I think right now Jack Shaw, I think, is going to be the next sort of standout. In my immediate mind, I think he's quite possibly going to be champion in the next couple of years.
Do you think he gets there before Leon Edwards, for instance?
That
division is so difficult, mate, and in the way you keep messing him around.
Yeah, it is a really difficult one, but I just look. They've not treated Leon Edwards right in my mind. We spoke about it many times. I feel like they really, not giving him the attention and the opportunities he deserves. And that division's so mixed up, it's hard to predict on whether he's going to get that title shot at any immediate time. But, in regards to the new blood coming through, because, Leon Edwards has obviously been relevant for quite a number of years, but regards to anyone new coming through who could stand a chance, I'd say Jack Shaw. I think he's just looking incredible, really has.
Still it's his all-round game as well, isn't it?
Yeah, still unbeaten. No one seems to be able to come close to figuring out his game plan, which is becoming quite obvious. He strikes a little bit, then he smothers in his wrestling, and he just mauls you on the ground, and you stand back up, he could just drag you back down again. It's like an alligator dragging you underwater, rather than just eating you to death, he'll just slowly drown you. It's incredible watching him fight. It really is. And he's only ever going to get better at doing this. And he hasn't even developed his man athleticism yet and his man strength. I mean, that's a scary, scary prospect. Yet it looks like he manhandles people who look physically stronger, which is just really complementary to what Richard Shaw, his dad's doing to his technical game. He's obviously got to be well positioned to be functionally strong, and he seems to always be in optimum position, because he doesn't seem to struggle at all, even with guys that look really muscled, really athletic. He's outmanoeuvring them in every sense of the word. So, that's who I think is going to be the next new standout regards British fighters over in UFC.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you mentioned like he's so young still as well. But like when we were doing all those retro reviews, which we will go back to, we were looking at Jack's sort of rise, and we were doing each fight with it, and like he did every fighter, no matter if they had a size advantage, a reach advantage, he would just drag them down. And then all of a sudden, I think it was about 6 fights in, we were watching along, and he knocked someone out with his hands, and you're thinking, all right, okay, so he's got something else to his game as well. It's not just drag him down, wrestle him. He's got a bit of lightning in those hands as well. So it will be real interesting to see how he develops. I think they've almost been a bit too careful in building him up. Like when you think who they put Modestus in with, who they put Mason Jones in with, like the other week, who was a very good fighter. Whereas I feel like with Jack, they've been a little bit more, what's the word? I guess not careful, but like just precise with who they've put him in. That's not to say that the fighters he's been in with are not good fighters, but I'm waiting for him to get that big name and really make a statement for himself to move up towards that sort of rankings.
You get your shot in UFC. Some people get harder, selections of fights in their debut and so on than over others. Sometimes I think it's a little point of that's just the way it is sort of thing. I think when you're fighting UFC, you've got to be prepared to fight anyone, any level. Yeah. And
by the way, I think Mason Jones will be right up there for in terms of title pictures.
Yeah,
I know he lost his unbeaten streak, but
Yeah, so he's just got to reset himself. So that's just going to put him a little step behind, I think, Jack Shaw in terms of trying to, push towards getting into relevancy for a title. I just think Jack Shaw is obviously ahead of him in that front. But yeah, and regards to anyone else with a standout, I'll have to, I can't not mention Georgian Vasenik, a very own student of mine. I just think, he's going to become the next Cage Warriors champion and very quickly move on to UFC and start making impacts there as well. It's all going to come to light in March.
Yeah, 100%, mate. Not a great deal going on in terms of news this week, but although one thing we have got is Ben Askren looks like he's going to be having a boxing match with Jake Paul, which is very interesting. Ben Askren, obviously an NCAA wrestling champion, a real standout wrestler, did very well in Japan and other promotions. Came over to the UFC, it didn't go to plan, and didn't quite look the same after he got knocked out by Masvidal. But in terms of wrestling, he was, probably one of the best in the world at any given time. So, what do you think about him fighting Jake Paul in a boxing match? Do you think, as a combat athlete, we should still expect him to quite comfortably beat Jake Paul, or do you think because Ben Askren's speciality or very preferred discipline is not necessarily his striking, so is it going to be perhaps a closer fight than what we'd expect?
Yeah,
It's an eight. Sorry to interrupt you, mate. It's an 8-round. But it is professional fight. It's 8 rounds. Takes place on April the 17th.
Yeah. Okay. So this is not going to be easy on either. It's going to be so hard to predict what happens. To be honest, Ben Askren, as you know, is not known for his striking whatsoever. He's not shown any true pedigree of striking capabilities, really, in the MMA. So he's not a great striker by any stretch. The thing is with Jake Paul, he's got so much money at his disposal. He's probably training with top guys.
He's probably training with Floyd Mayweather or something ridiculous.
He's I think he's quite considerably younger, right?
Yeah.
So he's got a lot of things going in his favour, actually. It's just not the greatest representative of the MMA community to meet in a boxing arena, but. Ben Askren, he's an athlete nevertheless, and I'm sure he'll be getting the right type of people around him to try to, make him prepared for such a bout. But the worry is obviously if Jake Paul defeats Ben Askren, it's going to almost like he'll definitely be pushing it that he's got one over on the MMA community in some form or fashion, and he's going to make more noises to fight someone else. In which case,
he wants that Conor McGregor fight.
Yeah, he'll call that Conor McGregor, and I just don't. Well, Conor McGregor will put him out. I really believe that.
Oh God, you would knock you. Regardless of whether you think Conor McGregor might be on the decline or he's not as good as people say, all the things that get thrown at Conor McGregor, there's no way Jake Paul is withstanding that left hand from Conor McGregor more than, if he connects with it, it's game over. But I'll be real interested to see how it goes. I will watch it. We will discuss it. We'll cover it. It says they're going to have 10-ounce gloves, 20 by 20 ring. It's going to be a professional boxing match. It is on the card. It will be full of. It'll be filled up with past and present names of boxing, as well as social media celebrities and MMA fighters featuring competing in boxing matches, which will all be revealed in the coming weeks. So, in my opinion, Logan Paul will probably fight on this card as well. So I'll be interested who he fights, because my kind of thing with that is if I was making these pay-per-views and I like money, I do, I would put Logan Paul and Jake Paul on separate pay-per-views, because their fans alone who buy that pay-per-view will make you millions. Yeah. And I think it's a mistake to put them both on the same card. However, because I feel like Jake Paul versus Ben Askren is quite a big deal, because Ben Askren's quite a big name, isn't he? He's not like Jake Paul fought Nate Robinson in his last fight, who was a former baseball player, I think. Like, to me, in the UK, and I knew Jake Paul more than I knew who Nate Robinson was, whereas Ben Askren, I think, is much more well known. So I think whilst it's not necessarily it's not on the level of like a Jake Paul versus Conor McGregor, for instance, it is. I think it is up there, isn't it, in terms of name value. So it'll be interesting. But Jake Paul said he wants to beat a couple of MMA guys in boxing, and then his plan is to get the Conor McGregor fight. I think, and will be now 31st January. It's my youngest son's birthday tomorrow. I say that Conor McGregor versus Jake Paul or Logan Paul, one or the other, will happen in a boxing ring in the next 2 to 3 years. Because ultimately, if Jake Paul wins a couple of boxing matches in the next year or two, Conor McGregor it's like an easy 100 million for him. Like,
he's not easy money, but
he's not going to take the same amount of damage that he did, or he could have done, should I say, against Mayweather. It could be all over in a couple of rounds. 100 million in your back pocket. Why wouldn't you do it? Ultimately,
exactly.
And by then, you've got to remember, Conor McGregor is going to be like right towards the end of his fighting career by then as well. In 2 years, he's going to be, he's got aged another couple of years, so it'll be interesting, mate. Right, let's finish off then. Predictions for next week. A couple of good fights. We've got. I like this one. A lightweight bout between Diego Ferreira and Beneil Dariush. Really like that fight. I think that's going to be very entertaining. I enjoy watching Diego Ferreira. Even he's 17-2. Brazil versus Iran, which would be interesting because Beneil Dariush, he's ranked 13 and Ferreira's ranked 10. But Beneil Dariush, I think, is one of those fighters who's not necessarily that consistent, in terms you don't always know which version of him is going to turn up. On his day, he's very capable.
Yeah.
Who you got?
I'm going to go with Ferreira on that one.
Yeah, I think Ferreira too.
I just think he's a bit tidy all round.
Yeah, he's. I really like Ferreira. He's ranked 10, and I think if he can get a comprehensive victory or a convincing victory, he's going to be looking to fight someone in that top 5 ultimately.
Sure.
And try and go, towards the title picture. I'm not going to go through every fight. We've got a good flyweight bout on there. It's Alexandre Pantoja versus Manuel Cape. I'm not particularly familiar with Cape, but the last time we watched Alexander the Cannibal Pantoja, who's ranked number 5, he was scintillating.
Yeah, he's very, very good, and my money would be on him to get that victory. Although Cape is good. He's definitely going to be no pushover.
We did watch Cape, didn't we?
We have
watched
seen
him fight someone. I can't remember who he fought.
He's definitely good. Definitely good. But they seem to be at that weight. They seem so heavily skilled. They're so fast, aren't they? That's who I've got my money on. I'll stick for that.
Yeah, I like Pantoja. I really enjoy watching it. I can't. The page is not loading. I was trying to have a look at Manuel Cape's record. What else we got? We got a good women's match, but I'm not going to go through that because I'm not really familiar with either girls. So we got a bantamweight bout between Corey Sandhagen and Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar said this week that he feels if he can beat Sandhagen convincingly, he should be in the title picture, which I think is true. Like Sandhagen's ranked 2, Edgar's ranked 4th. Who you got in this bantamweight division bout?
I find it very hard to bet against Corey Sandhagen. He just looks so rangy and so sharp. I just don't know whether Edgar's going to be able to get in and push close. So for me, Frankie Edgar, it's not going to be about cardio or anything, because I know Frankie Edgar's got bags of that, but so is Sandhagen. But for me, Frankie Edgar's going to have to push close and try and make relevancy of his wrestling. He's going to have to try and get hold of this lad, and I just don't think he's got the capabilities to keep pushing deep and close to get Sandhagen down and control him enough. Because certainly on the outside, I think Sandhagen's just going to pick him apart with punches and kicks and that footwork of his. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just having a quick look at Edgar. He beat Pedro Munez in his last bout, which I think was he beat him by decision. But that's a big, that's quite a big name to beat. Obviously, that's off the back of losing a decision to Holloway back in 2019. So he had a big gap between fights because he lost to Holloway in July 2019. Was scheduled to fight Young in December 2019. That fight didn't happen, and then he didn't fight until the August of last year against Pedro Munez. So he's had a bit of a gap in between fights. I just think Corey Sandhagen has been so impressive. Just gonna have a quick look, see how active he was last year. But Edgar on his day is good. Pedro Munez is no mug by any means, and he beat him. So Sandhagen fought Moraes last October, won via TKO. He did lose to Aljamain Sterling via submission in June of last year. But look, there's no disgrace in that. Aljamain Sterling's up the top of that division for a reason. I think Sandhagen's is more likely to beat that because I look at some of the people he's beaten in the last couple of years. Batista, he's beaten Lineker. He lost to Aljamain Sterling, beat Pedro Moraes. So I think it'll be a good fight though. I gotta say, I think it'll be a good close fight. And then the main event, mate, is Alistair Overeem versus Alexander Volkov. I think we did discuss this a little bit last week.
We have.
But go on, who do you think? Has your opinion changed?
No, I'm going to stick with Overeem. To me, Overeem's just more better rounded. Obviously, he's not a young man anymore. He's really got a lot of miles on his clock in terms of how many fights he's had and how much cage time that he's put in over the years. But Volkov equally, he's had a lot of fights over the years as well. And Volkov, to me, has got the striking advantage because he's taller, rangier, and probably got a better chin. Lost less mileage on his chin than Overeem. And Overeem has shown some vulnerability to being hit and knocked out. So I think Overeem will just use his striking to set up his timing ready to enter for a takedown. And Volkov's looked vulnerable, to being taken down and not looking great on the ground. Overeem, I really rate him on the ground. He's a really, really accomplished grappler. I think he'd be too much for Volkov on the ground and probably will win either by ground and pound or a submission.
Yeah, 100%, mate. It's going to be a good one. I'm going to go with Volkov. Ironically, kind of for similar reasons to what you think Overeem will, because they got some quite similar skill sets. But I'm going to go with Volkov for the sake of our little competition. And that brings us to a close this week, mate. A nice, short, sharp show with special guest. Obviously, next week, like I mentioned, we've got UFC competitor Arnold Allen joining us. We'll also be discussing the Overeem Volkov card and the latest news, among other things. But as ever, mate, I thank you for your time.
It's nice. A bit different this week, but that's okay. We can switch it up a bit every now and then. Why not? Yeah,
why not, mate? That's it, mate. It's enjoyable nonetheless. And I encourage people to subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/A.C.E Podcast Nation. Click the bell and you'll get a notification every time we upload a new video or go live. But in the meantime, we'll be back next week. Next Wednesday, 8 o'clock, the Danny Batten Fight Show. I thank you all.
Defending champion, welcome, Danny Batten.
You're listening to A.C.E Podcast Nation, the hottest new podcast network and YouTube channel in the UK, featuring original series, top guests, expert analysts, and more. Check out facebook.com/AceCast Nation for news on latest guests and shows. Watch every show in full at youtube.com/ACE Podcast Nation.